Hey there, viewers, and welcome back to Grumpy Monkey Garage, where today we're going to teach you how to buy a car, and we're going to buy a car. All right, so since most sellers aren't going to let us just film their house or wherever we're end up going, all I've got is an address. We'll find out when we get there. I've made a list of things to check for that I'm going to explain to you now, so when we're on secret Spidey Cam mode, I can't tell you. So we're going to go over it now. So we brought Rob from Rob's Garage because he buys cars too and has been in our challenges and has watched me buy lots of toilets. Well, don't I buy the best toilets?
You buy some pretty pristine toilets, I will say.
A+.
And I've given you a toilet.
You've given me a toilet. We should put a picture of the toilet on the screen if we still have it. That was a great Christmas gift.
Oh, no, there's a picture of Mike straddling the toilet.
That's pretty awesome.
That's awesome.
Anyway, so things to look for when you're buying a car, since I'm the car buying fiend, is the title. That's the most important thing. Don't start looking at the car's condition and get all excited. The title, the paperwork to the car is the most important part of the process. Because if you don't have good paperwork, you can't register the car, you can't use the car. So before you even bother with the car, look at the paperwork.
As much as they want to see the cash, you want to see the title.
Exactly. So make sure you're looking at a title. Now, when talking about titles, we got 5 different kinds of titles in the state of Georgia. Other states might have more or less. There's some states that actually have less variations in titles, but here's the 5 main ones that I've seen in a lot of different states and in Georgia. First is obviously the clean title. This is the title you want to buy. The person you're buying it from, their name is on that title, and there's no liens. It's clean, it's clear, it's ready to go. That's the type. The things to watch out for are a salvage title. Now, what does a salvage title mean? Well, a salvage title means the car has been wrecked or involved in some sort of damage that exceeded 50% value of vehicle, and insurance wrote them a check and wrote the car off.
And it significantly damages the value of the vehicle itself.
Correct. So it's going to hurt the value. Unless you know what you're doing, I would really stay away from a salvage title. There is a way to get them rebuilt, but it's a lot of work, it's a lot of process, and usually salvage titles are from accidents. So they might have had the bags deployed, or especially if you're looking at something old, you know, I'd stay away from a salvage title. Up next, we're going to talk about rebuilt titles. That is when you've taken a salvage title and it's gone through inspection, it's been passed off, and it is completely repaired. That is a rebuilt title. It's been past government inspection, and it has been cleared as a safe vehicle, and it's been given a rebuilt title. Now, that's not the same as a clean, but the car's probably in good shape, and you can register a rebuilt title. So yeah, that wouldn't be something to be worried about.
The thing is, 9 times out of 10, if somebody's selling a rebuilt title, they're losing their ass on it.
Yeah, so they're not really making money off rebuilt titles unless you're one of the more popular YouTubers who buy salvage, rebuild, and sell for very, very cheap. Yeah. There is a way to do it. That's not something I'm interested in. I'm always hunting for those clean titles, but that's what rebuilt means. The next type is a lien title. So this is a title where when you flip it over, it's got some, a pawn on it or a finance company. There's some other name on the back. And that's not going to be good for you, because that means that person still owes money on that car, and if they sell it to you, that finance company is going to come after you for the remaining balance on that lien, and you don't know what that lien amount is. At least in Georgia, it just says lien. It does not say the amount. So they could have financed a 92 Ford Taurus for $5,000, and you buy it for $400, and now they come after you for $5,000. It does going to hurt your credit. So make sure you don't get scammed with a lien title. It looks just like a clean title because it's never been wrecked or flooded, but when you flip it over, they owe somebody money on that title. So do not buy that title at all. If the lien's been released, it'll go back to a clean title. You won't have that lien on there anymore. So lien titles, absolutely no buying. Bonded title. Bonded title is unusual, so it changes from state to state. In the state of Georgia, it's when you no longer have a title for the vehicle, or everyone who has any rights to the vehicle is dead, or the vehicle's been abandoned. You can apply through the tag office insurance. We haven't all the way figured out how to do a bonded title, but basically a bonded title means there was no title involved. You went through the system and got a bonded title for that car. It does work differently than a clean title, and some insurance companies won't insure a bonded title, as I found out. So bonded's a little more difficult, but if you talk to your insurance and you talk to your tag office about a bonded title, if that's what you're up against, you might find out more information for your particular area.
Most of the time, it's a huge waiting game, though. There's a lot of time involved on it, and the car sits. So if you need a car immediately, that's not the one to go for.
You really want to be looking for a clean title and avoiding the rest of these, but I wanted to include what they were, so if you saw it, you knew these are not clean titles, so you don't want to deal with those. They will be marked. Make sure you read the entire thing, because also on the title it'll say things like odometer discrepancy if the mileage has been rolled back, or flood damage, or any of those stuff will be listed on the title. So that's some stuff to look out for you. Also the color. Sometimes, like this Dodge truck behind us, the title lists the color as blue, but if you're looking at the title and it says white and you look at this truck, something is definitely wrong, Captain. Either it's been in such a bad wreck they painted the whole truck the wrong color, or it's the wrong truck and might be stolen. So that's something to look out for.
There's some VIN plate, trickery going on there.
Definitely want to be careful with that. All right. The next thing we want to talk about is you should definitely bring a mechanic with you to look at the car.
100%. 100%. Even if you are a mechanic, bring a buddy who is a mechanic.
That's what I'm doing.
They will see things that you won't see.
That's right. Now, what things should we be looking for?
Oh God, salt damage. You pop the hood, you see any kind of corrosion on the actual block itself, motor mounts, this, that, and the other. Crawl underneath the car, look to see if you can see any kind of actual dented frames. A lot of people will have a fender bender, replace the fender, replace any kind of actual fascia that's actually damaged. You look underneath the car and you see a wheel well that's been caved in. You're like, there's a little more to it than that. So
absolutely, it's
one of those things that you just got to. If you bring a friend, there's time and time again where I got to look at something, bike, motorcycle, car, whatever. Brought a friend with me, usually Scotty Boy, and he will point things out that I didn't see, and vice versa. When he goes look at things, he'll bring me, and I'll see things that he doesn't see.
Right, and the other things you want to look for mechanically is if you are not a mechanic and you don't know a mechanic, you can hire mechanics to go look at the car with you. If you're at a used car dealership or even a new car dealership and you're buying a used vehicle, do not trust the mechanics that work there. They're going to make money if you buy that car, so they're encouraged not to say anything. So just remember that. You want to bring somebody who works for you to look at that car, not that they work for them. If they're doing it for free, you're about to get scammed. Don't do that. You want to have a mechanic who's going to charge you an hour's labor to come look at that car. They're going to do a full inspection to look for all the things we just listed. But things you can look at yourself as well is you can pull the VIN number off of the dash and you can have a gander at the Carfax. You just pull the numbers there, you put them into Carfax, you'll have to buy it. You do spend money, but it's money well spent, and you'll get a full history of the car. We're going to do that on the car we're going to buy today and figure out what we're up against.
One other thing you want to check too is when you look at the VIN on the dash, open up the driver's side door, make sure the VIN in the door matches the VIN on the dash.
Now, if you're looking at something really old, it's not uncommon for them not to match. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's stolen because the door might have been replaced, but that will tell you it's been in an accident or had enough damage to that door that they replaced it. So the VIN on the dash is the one that the government inspects to register the car. That's the one that needs to match the title. So make sure those are the same, because if they're not, something is fishy. Don't buy that car. Okay, so we're looking for rust damage, as we mentioned. That would be a Yankee condition. Flood damage. Now, most of the time, flood damage will leave a water line, but used car dealers will pressure wash that right off, and they don't care about it. So you're going to look under the hood for that water line, somewhere behind the engine or on the shock towers, or in the trunk. You might pull the carpet back a little bit and look for a water line. Those are places they're not going to check for that kind of thing, or even in the rear door jambs if you're looking at a sedan. You'll see a water line, and that's a good clue that that car's been in a flood. Another good thing to look for while you're in there is rat damage. Just when you open up the hood, just
smell.
Oh yeah, get you an aroma test, because if you've got the smell of rat turds, and maybe rat poison would be another clue. If you smell rat poison, they're trying to get rid of the rat problem. Rats eat wiring. You're going to have lots of electrical problems. They'll show up randomly. So even if it doesn't act up on the test drive, you could still have an electrical nightmare ahead of you. Something else to consider mechanically when buying a car, that there may be nothing wrong with it, but if you're at a mileage where you might be due for a timing belt, which you'll have to do your research to see if your make and model has a timing belt. Timing belts are expensive and labor-intensive repairs if you're not doing it yourself. So because of that, you need to prepare that if you're at that mileage you're due and it hasn't already been done, then you're going to need to go ahead and pay for that right after you buy it. So factor that into your purchase price, or maybe use it as a negotiation point. Also, just because they say it was done doesn't mean it was. Is it on the Carfax? Do they have a receipt? No Carfax? Assume it wasn't done. You can pretty much guarantee it hasn't been at that point. That might be their reason for selling.
It's one of those things that whenever I go to look at buying a car, before I even go to look at the car, I'll actually look up the, go on Advanced Auto Parts or AutoZone's website, see how much brake rotors, calipers, pads are, see how much an AC compressor is going to be.
That's cost of maintenance. That's more of what car to buy, which we're going to do a video on that too, of which car to buy and what's cheaper to own for your budget. But you can look on those Advanced AutoZone to find out if the car you're looking at has a timing belt because you can go to timing components.
That's where I was referring to on that one too. Yeah.
Tires on the car, make sure they're in good shape. If they're not, it's not necessarily a deal breaker, but just know you're going to have to buy those soon. And does it have a spare? Now we have a whole separate video talking about tires and how to tell how old they are and the tread depth and things. So you can go look at that if you want more information on that, along with how to check the fluid. So if you're doing it yourself, you can use our videos to help you out there. Wreck damage, you're going to look and make sure all the panels line up. See how this truck has this nice pinstripe goes all the way down it? If the pinstripe didn't line up, you can bet it's been bonked somewhere, so that's a clue. Body lines, even if it doesn't have the pinstripe, it'll have a nice, like your F-250 over there has a nice body line down. And if it doesn't line up, something is wrong. And then the last thing is, why is this car for sale? Ask for the story. Is it for sale because it needs a timing belt? They can't afford it? Well, factor that in. You can still get a good car, and you just got to pay for that timing belt. There's nothing wrong there. Did they get this car because Meemaw drove it for 50 years and she's passed away, and then it sat for 6 months while they found the title, and now it's got rodent damage and it's for sale? Why is the car for sale? If the story doesn't make any sense, something's amiss. Just be feeling out the seller. Is this an honest person? If they're dishonest or their story's inconsistent, something's wrong. If I'm selling a car, I'm pretty straightforward with what I'm selling, and most people are. They'll tell you, I'm selling it because, my kid went to college, they drove it all through college, and now they bought a new car, and now I'm selling their old high school car. That's a perfectly valid story. But just know if it was a high school car, it hasn't been maintained. So that's another thing to watch out for.
Whenever I take a buddy with me, like Scott, for instance, we will sometimes tag team questions. Like I'll ask a question, and then later on in the events of looking at the vehicle or whatnot, he'll ask the same question just in a different version, so we get two different answers.
It's a great way to do it.
Just to catch somebody on something that they may be, being shady with.
Absolutely.
And they'll get nervous on that, and they will most of the time slip on it too.
That's right, especially if it's minutes apart, 30, 45 minutes later.
Yes.
They may not remember what they said, so it's a good way to feel if they're full of crap or not. So those are things to watch out for and what to do. Now let's go and find us a good example. Now I'm a mechanic and I'm buying the worst of them because we're going to do some more challenge videos. So I'm intentionally looking for bad cars. So we're going to show you what not to look for this challenge video car.
Can't wait.
Oh yeah. Now the drive. Let's get going.
And we're back. It's been a day because by the time we got back, it wasn't really practical to be filming at that point, and the seller didn't really want to be seen on camera, obviously, because take a look at our jalopy that we've bought. Now, I buy the worst cars on purpose to entertain you guys with challenges, but this is particularly awesome as an example of what not to do. So what I'm going to start showing you is everything we mentioned before we left, but here. So let's start with, should we start with accident damage or mechanical issues?
Oh God,
we got so much to choose from.
It's a long list. It's a long list.
I feel like we should start with mechanical issues.
Oh yeah, we'll go there. Yeah, that's good.
Right. Let's get under the hood. So we're going to check out the engine bay, but we're skipping a step. Remember the first thing I told you earlier was that you want to check for a title and its importance. Now I bought this from a used car dealer who got it on either a trade-in or bought it at auction, and I got it really, really cheap. But I was able to hold the title and prove that this is legitimately who owns it, and I was able to prove that. When you go to buy a car, before you look at any of this, make sure that it's a legitimate title, because no matter how good the car is, if the paperwork's wrong, you're still screwed. So paperwork first, then this. So what we're going to look at under here is all the fluids and good stuff that we showed you in our How to Check the Health of a Car video. But we're going to give you some examples of bad things. Rob, take us away. Give us a journey on the broken stuff.
There's more oil on the outside than there is on the inside. I can tell you that 100%. You can actually see a lot of the oil spray underneath. Oh God, that's awesome. Underneath the actual hood, from where the fans have actually been picking it up and exiting it on top of the hood, and actually out the front bumper of all things. Must be push fans or push fans rather than pull fans.
You're correct.
The washer bottle, it's one of those ones you can service from the outside without having to remove the cap. That's awesome.
That is a common Corolla problem, by the way. If you're looking at this body style Corolla, they all have cracked washers along with the blinker delete. It's pretty common.
The underhood insulation is gone only because it was probably almost catching on fire. There's a nice little polish spot here on the exhaust. It's really nice.
That is
the
the
only
intake.
nice part. That is the intake. My
First
bad.
day,
that is
guys.
the intake. But it's about the only nice part on the actual car itself. So, you know, they at least did a service on that one.
So things we'd look for, the radiator's obviously bad because it's got fluid coming out where the plastic meets the metal. We'll show you in some footage here. That is definitely a problem, so that would be a no-go unless you're going to use it as a marketing point to be able to haggle the price down. The way to check that, of course, is if I open this radiator cap, I could probably yodel into there and it'd yodel back. It's kind of broken. There's no nothing happening in there, so definitely bad. The other thing we want to look at is these are called strut towers. All the sedans are going to have these. If you look on this side, you can see what one is supposed to look like. You can have a gander over there on Robbie Boy's side, and okay, you probably shouldn't be able to take it apart with your fingers. So it's a little broken. Things that would be good to look at under this car is it does have a brand new battery in it. Now, most batteries have a date code on them. I'll show you a picture of some right here so you don't have to squeeze into this engine bay with me. But if you look at a battery, you can tell about how old it is by the sticker, along with it's very clean and there's not a lot of corrosion going on. So that's a big plus. So good battery, bad radiator, bad struts.
Now, the guy who actually sold it to us did tell us he put plugs and wires on it. So he
And
said,
we verified that as well.
He said as long as you sprayed starter fluid into the actual intake hose, it would actually crank up. And it did for a split little second. And then it caught the air filter on
And then you lit me on fire again. So thanks for that. It does have a melty, but that's because I'm buying the worst one. When you're buying a car, you're not going to be dealing with that. But obviously look for things that have been lit on fire. So all this soot right here would be a good clue that something happened right in here, and it was. It was my arm hair singeing off. Now that we've showed you some of the mechanicals to look for, we're going to look around the car and kind of talk about some things that would be definite no-go or proof that it's been in an accident. We'll go ahead and close this as an example. Let's start at the trunk.
I hope nothing falls off.
Hilarious. Okay, so we're at the back of the car, and we've got some tail light deletage happening. You can also see we've got a nice prominent dent. Now, as you look across the bumper to the other side, it doesn't have a dent in it, but you can see these crackly, like the way the paint is split up. If they were to pull this dent out, the paint wouldn't go back. So somebody's already pulled, or maybe it didn't hit it hard enough to dent it. But the other side has already been damaged because you can see where the paint was pushed. Are you trying to dent it again?
I just want to see if it'll do it again.
So no. The other thing is the trunk latch is completely unusable now. So we have been able to break into the trunk to ensure that there was no dead people in there, but the keyhole is gone. So that's something to check. A lot of times you test drive the car, you focus on mechanicals and price, you might forget to check features like, does the trunk open? It's a pretty crucial factor if you're going to be using it. So definitely make sure you can get into there. And if you can't, again, if you're skilled at repairing your own vehicles like I am, you can go ahead and buy it anyway and just use that as a negotiation point like I did. But if you're not and you don't want to have trouble when you're buying it or owning it, this would definitely be a red flag. It's been rear-ended and hit over there, and now we don't have a working trunk. Things to look at.
The interior. Brake clean, best disinfectant. So, what we have here is we have one of the worst interiors that you could possibly get. The aftermarket radio is actually missing a knob, so that goes to show you the length of the interior. But the headliner is probably one of the best parts of this entire car. I absolutely loved it when I looked in it, and I was like, Andrew, you have to buy it based off the headliner alone. Looks like a really angry badger got locked in here after somebody hotboxed it. It's hilarious. So things to negotiate as far as the actual car itself is you have a cracked windshield. The windshield being cracked, that's one thing to negotiate for. Obviously, the aesthetics of the interior. If one's as bad as this, you can pretty much negotiate what you want. The other thing I want to look at is, oh Lord, the steering wheel. Steering wheel is, well, there's metal. There's not much insulation around it, so that's awesome. There's just, plastics to look for, this, that, and the other to actually negotiate. Does the glove box work? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. We had to do the same thing with the trunk that we had to do with the glove box. Our panels, matching. The door window crank, as it works sometimes, it's mixed matched. So, you know, there's certain things to look at to see what's been done cheaply and what has been done right. And this is just all kinds of bad.
I found the trunk lock.
Oh God, look at that. Mystery solved. So, yes, things to look for when you're looking at the interior of the vehicle. Everything that could be wrong that doesn't look right with the car. Everything's wrong with this one. So, we're gonna get back out before I catch a disease. Catch you on the flip side.
Now, again, this is something you're going to get excited when you're buying a car. You're going to look at the mechanicals. You'll probably test drive it. There's no rear door handle. That's something you want to pay attention to. And even if it does have a door handle, does it work? So sometimes the handle on the exterior here might look real pretty, but it may not function. These Corollas have a problem with door handles breaking, and if you were buying a Corolla that had them, we actually have a video on how to replace these door handles, both the interior and the exterior. They're not too hard, but it is something to note, do they work? If the door doesn't open because of that rear end wreck we showed you earlier, and these panels are squished together, you're buying a 3-door car for a 4-door price, so make sure you get all 4 doors to work. That being said, the child safety lock could be on, so make sure you check that as well. Same thing Rob was just talking about on the interior. It smells like an angry badger was left in there with a giant pile of cocaine, so it's really gross. Again, I'm buying the worst ones on purpose. If you're buying the best one, just look out for this kind of stuff. When you sit in the car, look up, look at the headliner, look at the back. Does it look like a baby with a full diaper? These are things to check for. While we're on the exterior, let's talk a little bit about wheels and tires. And these tires, they are all for the same tire. They're Michelin's all the way around. What's weird is this is a Florida car. I'm buying it in Georgia, and these are snow tires. I guess they were having a sale. They do have good tread, and they are going to work for our purposes, so we're going to leave them alone. The rims are all there, but this one is bent, so that was another negotiation point you're able to make. The more things wrong, the cheaper the car, as a typical rule. When you're buying a car, do not do what I'm doing unless you have the skill set. If you don't have the skill set, this isn't worth it. Find the best example of the car you can, even if it costs more than all the other ones you've looked at, because you spend money up front, saves you money in the long run. You get what you pay for in this business, unless you're doing what I'm doing and buying the worst on purpose. So definitely look around. Don't just go for the best bargain, because you're gonna miss stuff like this, and you're gonna end up with something that needs repairs. Buy the best example you can of that car.
Speaking of repairs, come to this side.
On this side, the gas door does not stay latched, and every time you hit the brakes, it's doing one of those. But while we were on the test drive, it was important I had Rob actually follow us on the test drive, which was really short because we had to push it because this one doesn't run. But if you are going for a test drive, have your friends, family member follow you and look at the wheels, because you might have a symptom like this. So the wheels are literally falling off of this car. So this is exactly why you want to bring a mechanic with you, because in this example, they're pretty obvious, all the problems, because they just jump out at me because I'm a Corolla fanatic, as you can see from our other Corolla restoration videos. But if you're buying a car, bring a mechanic, because like that wheel bearing, you may not have even noticed what was wrong with that. Some other things that Rob noticed that I didn't notice, and I am a mechanic. Always bring a second set of eyes, especially somebody trained in cars, that they're going to know what to look for, so that you don't end up buying a jalopy like this.
At least the one person that knows something about a car. At least the one.
Absolutely, and make sure you know what you're buying and what the common problems are. As I mentioned earlier about the blinker covers and the wash reservoir being cracked being a common issue on these Corollas, look up the common issues for the car you're going to look at, and then check those specific things as well. There's plenty of YouTube information out there. There's also a lot of forums for lots of different cars, like the Corollas and Honda Accords, and not just the Toyotas. Everywhere we'll have a forum for it.
100%.
So that's something to check. Make sure you look at reviews. Don't buy Chrysler products.
God almighty, no.
Don't do it.
No, stay away from it.
I'd much rather see you in something that looks ugly but will get you A to B forever, just like this. It's a much better choice than buying something pretty that's going to have a giant freaking repair bill monthly. BMW.
If this tells you anything that how much he would prefer you not to get a Chrysler, he'd prefer you get a Ford over a Chrysler.
Depends on which one. They're pretty awful.
I don't know.
A CVT Ford or an old Dodge Ram, there's exceptions to that rule. But that's getting technical. What you need to know for buying cars has been covered in this video, or at least a good overview. If you have any questions, leave us a comment down below, and we hope you enjoyed the show. See you next time on Grumpy Monkey.